And we're live. Greetings, everyone. I'm Salvador Cordova. Welcome to the Evidence and Reasons for the Christian Faith video channel, where we explore evidence and reasons for the Christian faith. Most of the last few months here, we've definitely covered the science aspects. I'm planning on expanding to other aspects like archaeology, personal testimonies, and other things in Christian apologetics. I hope you really enjoyed this most recent episode by Dr. Tour, episode 11. I was just totally overwhelmed, even though my subject matter supposed expertise is in biophysics, and he talked a lot of biophysics today. I was very humbled by realizing how little I know about anything. There's all this going on, and it was great to also see that there's stuff in the textbooks that have been taught for 75 years that doesn't account for probably one of the most important contributions, which is this CISS phenomenon. I have never heard of this. And I'm glad that I saw in the bottom of his videos references. This would be very interesting. And given that I have a master's degree in applied physics from a good school, I have to tell you, oh my goodness, to understand this lecture, I think I would need at least a month of full-time study just to grasp it, because it had chemistry and physics in it. The idea of electron spin being controlled and its effect on the yield of chemical reactions. I think the thing that really astonished me was that without the CISS phenomenon, we could expect that the human brain would need a megawatt power plant to drive it. Of course, the human brain would burn up under those conditions. But because of the homochirality in our cells, he pointed out that we're able to operate at like 10 watts, which is just amazing, So that would be like a factor of 1,000,000 times more efficiency because of homochirality. I did not know that. And I'm really glad he covered that, because that goes over, this is really cutting edge biophysics, biochemistry, physical chemistry, synthetic chemistry, all of the above. And he tied it together. So I would like to, yeah, someone said this was intense. Oh my goodness. What an understatement. Yes, my mind was blown. I thought I'd seen most of what I expected to be all the major stuff. This was just caught me from totally off guard. I did not know it would be this good. I had known something. I did a presentation in my cellular biology class for the dean of my graduate school. All the students had to do this. I wasn't picked out. I did mine on spin chemistry, and Dr. Tour is mentioning that the relationship of electron spin and magnetic fields. It turns out that if one can control the spin of electrons, particularly in what they call electron pairs, you can sense magnetic fields. And so I'm wandering a little bit off topic, because what Dr. Tour said today is just so far beyond anything that I can understand. I can only just throw out something peripheral, but it enables birds to travel, like the Arctic tern, to travel 40,000 miles a year using a spin magnetic compass. We wouldn't know how to build that. And the takeaway I got today was that oh my. The takeaway I got from today was that we can't build stuff like, I've said this often, and I said, is anyone going to challenge me on this? I've said it often that the technology represented in the cell exceeds all of the scientific and engineering knowledge on the planet. If you took all the best scientists, we couldn't do this. And I'm more convinced of that now that I've seen this. We have not been able to exploit this. In my discussion last night with Dr. Cardinal, and he seemed to brush it off, and I respect him. So this is not intended as a slight on him, but I was pointing out the only place where biology is mostly characterized as being clumsy and incompetent, and stupid and junky. It's evolutionary biologists. People that build nanosystems are just overwhelmed, and I've seen that when I deal with nano engineers and people who are synthetic organic chemists. I know a few of them, and they're just blown away with what goes on in the cell. It can do it so much better. So yeah, we look at the cell. I mean, a biophysicist made this comment. They say you look at living things, you think they're just so frail because of their vulnerability to the environment. But then when you think about how it actually accomplishes its tasks, it does it at the limits of physics. And I think I'm going to maybe cite a article by Natalie Tangier. And it's really sad. I and my colleagues were sending something that eventually did get accepted by an editor. God willing, it'll be out this year in a peer-reviewed publication. But the editor didn't like my citation of a New York Times article that talked about optimization in physics. So I had to cite something scholarly. But the New York Times, for a change, actually said something and stated it in a way that was just had a wow factor. So LPP, welcome. And I hope you enjoyed James Tour's talk.
Oh, I did. There's multiple mic drop moments, of course, as usual, from the good doctor. And I think something that, and he was alluding to this, he didn't directly state it, but I'm guessing he probably will at a later date. Some of the things he was referring to are part of a growing portion in study of enzymes, which is called the quantum tunneling and the quantum coherence enzymes. And I actually read a very interesting paper about that topic a couple months ago, and basically the first half of it was the chemist saying, when are the status quo higher ups in the world of biochemistry going to just accept that there are all sorts of things similar to the CISS that Dr. Tour was talking about tonight that we've been ignoring or won't even discuss and haven't discussed for quite some time, even though we've known about them. And when are we going to start accepting that there's way more that we don't understand about all these things, and many of them all the way into the many of the I know, for example purposes, the what Dr. Tour is talking about in terms of the overheating problem. There's actually one of the enzymes involved in that actually is enabling quantum tunneling, which is helping to transfer the heat or dissipate the heat and maximize the energy transfer simultaneously. And that process was discovered, I think, about 10 years ago. And it solved the overheating problem. It was that's why we don't have this problem. And anyway,
and I may have heard it, and I didn't appreciate it at the time, and that was before I had my physics degree anyway. So, that's the thing is, if you actually start to study this stuff and try to even think of how to build it, once you start to do that, you appreciate it. But up until that time, you can be like in Professor Dave land. You just think it's so easy because you don't know. Well, ignorance is bliss.
Well, I agree 100%. And I think for those who are listening, I strongly recommend you Google the term quantum biology. Sal and I have had multiple conversations about that concept, but Google quantum biology. There's multiple books out that have come out in the last 10 years about the topic. And one of the things that all the ones I've read so far all admit is that it really hasn't been until the last 15 years that people even contemplated the premise that those kind of things would be applicable to biological systems, because of the argument that, this could never be happening in a room temperature environment, in a wet room temperature environment. Therefore, let's not even consider, even though the math makes sense. Even though it would solve, if that was true, it would solve a lot of the problems we're having with our math. It was dismissed out of hand because, there's no way it could be that advanced. That's just way outside the purview of what's plausible in a biological system. That's only something that we could do, right? And of course, irony of ironies, what are they running into? Mammoth amounts of this stuff that they have to now account for.
Oh, before we go on, I'd like to congratulate you, John, on your YouTube channel's anniversary, and I know you'll have to go at some point.
Oh,
I will.
I'm actually going to. I've got too much stuff. I'm doing a. I've got a estate sale I'm doing tomorrow morning for my house, and I'm getting ready to move and stuff. I decided to push it back to Sunday. So feel free to keep this after show going as long as you want, because I am not going to be.
Oh,
I decided I got to push it back. I got too much stuff I got to do.
well, I just wanted to. I usually try not to conflict with other events, but when Dr. Tour's talking, it's like this is an opportune time to have an after show where people can just say, "Wow, I didn't know that," or "I was so overwhelmed, and this is so over my head." And I have to say, this one was just like way over my head, and I got humbled today. Uh, Actually, if you're in science, you're going to get humbled almost every day because there's something that will confront you. It's like I have no clue what someone just said, and I should know that, but I don't. Um, and
Well, and I think
yeah,
in line with what you're talking about there, I mean, it's a very. I mean, you and I've talked about this before. If you have the curiosity, or you allow yourself to begin to satiate to an extent your curiosity, the it will only continue to grow,
yeah,
because you start to realize, oh wow, I know basically nothing, and everything I continue to find out is more and more mind blowing than the last thing, or it might make something else that already blew my mind even more magnificent, because I now find out that, oh, this one thing that was incredible actually works in unison with this, and this, and then the macro function that they execute is even more like, are you kidding me?
yeah.
That's what's at wow. And I honestly wonder how people who want to restrict themselves to methodological naturalism and strict materialism, I'm like, just do you not realize the level to which you are having to willfully close your mind and limit your own curiosity?
And some people have said, well, oh, your curiosity is going to be killed if you just, once you say, oh, this, it was created, therefore science stops. I'm just like, no, no. When some genius has built something far beyond anything that anyone can build, you're more fascinated by the architecture, by the genius there. You want to study it. When anyone fascinated with technology, you just, because it's not junk, because it was created by great minds, you're fascinated to learn more about it.
Well, to claim that because you come to the conclusion that an intelligent agent was required, i.e., God, you would no longer have curiosity is the equivalent of saying that the Iranians scientists who have been reverse engineering American drones that crashed over there to try and replicate the technology are not curious in figuring out what went into it, because they know that some American scientists built the original.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that's what's being argued right now.
yeah,
In my opinion, that's what's being argued by
yeah.
that talking point we hear from the atheist crowd of like, how do
It's
you reach that conclusion? I mean, would you would you
yeah,
cease to try and figure things out? Well, or you wouldn't. You would still be curious. Okay, then
and
what's your point?
and, and by parallel, this has affected medical technology. I mean, it's hindered it. Thank God it didn't stop it. But if you think something is junk, are you going to? I don't go to a junkyard in particular to study it. If it's a junkyard, it's like, this is a wasteland. Why? And why would I study this when there are other things to study? The evolutionary mindset of trying to characterize the human genome as junk had hindered medical research, and we saw an example of this in ENCODE. I mean, I said yesterday I felt their conclusion was premature, but it was in the right direction. And even if they were premature, even possibly wrong, they shouldn't have been chastised for even putting out a hypothesis. It's not the business of evolutionary biologists to tell medical researchers what they can and cannot uh, deduce from their experiments. That's just terrible. And and people are feeling pretty threatened and having to tone down their some of their public description of the genome. It's like, oh, we can't say that it's marvelous. We can't say that this is awe-inspiring. We can't say that it is even functional. We have to say it's junk. Otherwise, we're going to get called out by certain quarters of academia. Thankfully, what did happen is the outcry for finding cures and treatments for things like cancer is so strong that we're just, they said, we're going to disregard what you guys say. It doesn't matter if it's politically or correct or not. Our mission is to heal people. We will find the truth, and we're not going to sugarcoat it just to satisfy evolutionary biologists who want to call it junk. And I've often laughed. One of the evolutionary biologists who's pioneered all this crusade against the National Institutes of Health, it seems his mission in life is to prove his genome is junk, I just laugh. I just laugh at that. His mission is to prove it's junk, and he gets upset if other people don't view their genomes the same way.
Yeah, it is very ironic too, but it actually coincides with the necessity for atheism. You must remove any hint of ultimate purpose and intent for your own very existence that is not 100% predicated on you. And I'm actually reading a book called The Naked Communist right now, and it's extraordinarily fascinating book. I highly recommend it. But it was very interesting as they're diving into the psychology and the worldview of Karl Marx and Engels. And their entire foundation is the exact same as what we hear from the modern atheist, and obviously extrapolate out usually to evolutionary biologists and such. There must be no absolute moral objective. There must be no intelligent designer. There must be no external purpose. And I was sitting there reading through the literal words of Karl Marx, and I'm like, wow, I hear this exact same stuff from atheists on YouTube and evolutionary biologists of different standings, and it's like, huh. Well, that's kind of interesting. The only way that atheism and also communism, ironically, can't have validity is for you to be purposeless and to be non-dependent on a higher power. It explains a tremendous amount of what we're currently dealing with on a variety of fronts.
I'm looking at this for this article by Natalie Tangier, or is it Tangier, on biophysics, and I'll have to look it up later. So if you want to elaborate on that point more about purposeless, that's what gets me is these guys act as if they have purpose in their life, because it seems like their main purpose is to get other people to think we're purposeless. I'm just like, yeah, do you see kind of the pointlessness of all that? Kind of, it's almost like a farce. They're so determined. We have one guy whose name shall not be mentioned, nor his channel, by me at least. Every day almost he's having a report and complaining about creationists. I'm just like, dude, do you have something better to do? Is that your purpose in life?
What's interesting about that too is it's a whole group of them. They all get together to basically whine about things. And irony of ironies, I've actually been having some fun with them on my community post. I won't dive into it right now, but it's getting pretty entertaining at this point. But the other day, they were going off on this whole exposition about how theists, we want to kill them. Like, we actively want to go and exterminate atheists everywhere. And I don't mean like ideologically, I mean literally. And I'm like, in what world do you live in where Christians and theists in general are running around trying to kill you? And I'm talking about in Western society. Like that's
the Muslims, but not Christians.
Yeah, I'm like that's not happening. Like, that is literally not happening. Like, if anything, the biggest argument being made is that Christians are too tolerant. in the modern society. Like, just let whatever go. Oh well, do your thing and just leave me alone. I'm gonna do my thing. Like, that is what is actually, that's the real world reality of Western civilization in the format in which we currently are. And if you're going to be running around claiming that the polar opposite is true, then I don't really know what reality you're living in. But I guess if that's your worldview, then it helps to make sense of your obsession with these things that we're talking about tonight. Of, like, you actually think that's plausible? like the stuff that Dr. Tor was talking about and going in great detail about tonight. Like, you guys actually think that's plausible? Like, that could actually happen, not just on some hypothetical little nook in your own mind of like, well, I guess. I mean, there's sci-fi fiction authorship awaiting you if you think that this stuff is actually plausible. And I would argue that some of the Star Trek and Star Wars authors that I've read over my life have way more coherence to their universes that they've created for sci-fi novels and such, and has more coherence than some of the theories and suppositions put forth by abiogenesis researchers.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I did find the article, and it's relevant to this whole thing about CISS. And again, for the audience, I was blown away today. Dr. Tour was throwing concepts at me that just went over, I've never heard, and also it went over my head, both. And I've often identified myself as someone who studies biophysics. I got really humbled. I was just like, oh my goodness, I've never heard of this. I had studied a little bit of spin chemistry, but not what we saw today. So along those lines, I said the thing that really amazed me, and I'd sort of heard it before and I didn't appreciate it until today, was that if we had ordinary chemistry that didn't have homochiral molecules, the brain would require a power plant on the order of 10 megawatts to operate. I mean, all right. So a microwave oven operates, 1,500 watts. Can you imagine 10 megawatts being focused into your brain? What that would do? If you had to, that's a lot of heat. I mean, I'd say that would constitute a small explosion just to operate for even a fraction of a second. And yet the brain is able to operate at 10 watts because of the way our mind is designed. It is fearfully and wonderfully made. And the thing that really amazed me, he said, we don't know how to do this. And we don't know how to exploit this sort of chemistry to improve the yields. And I was just blown away by that. That's just another level of sophistication. And that's why I've always felt like, even when I didn't have 100% proof of design, there are aspects of the way biology works. Even with what little I knew, I said, there's a mind behind this. It wouldn't surprise me if there are other things that are well designed. And, sadly, we live in a fallen world. So it's like, it does look like there is junk and trouble, and that's true. But there are enough remnants of intelligent design that you can still see aspects of the original creation. So what I see is we live in a very troubled world where there are lots of problems. And Darwin called it, what book a devil's chaplain would write. And because he was troubled by all the bad in the world. But there's also evidence of intelligent design. And that convinces me of the Christian faith, because the Christian faith is one faith that says we're intelligently designed, but also cursed. If you look at the way nature is playing out, it perfectly fits that Christian doctrine that we're intelligently designed, but also cursed, and that this world is passing away. And I find that to be of divine origin, not an invention of man.
No, I would agree with you on that completely. And, standing for truth makes a good point. Kind of dumbing down that concept you just outlined there of, folks, when you buy your car brand new at the dealership, it's in great shape. It doesn't take too long for the trips to McDonald's with your kids to leave stains on the carpet, or you're riding with your dog in your leather seats and you scratch a hole in it. I mean, those kind of things. And, the engine starts to break down. It still runs, but you're not getting quite as much pressure as you used to, so you don't have quite the get up and go that you once did. I mean, all those kind of things, you can extrapolate it out. And I agree with you in the context of like, what's the cause, right? And the point you're making, it's sin and the corruption and the curse that's been placed upon us. Because to me, when you really think about that point in terms of in my opinion, the obvious nature of something having happened in order to cause the collapse of the perfect state is evidenced by what we know with like the Hydra and some of these different organisms that don't seem to age. They seem to be immortal. There's different organisms that have the ability to replicate things. And when we look at our genome, we have different, not all, but we have some of these, at least appear to have some of these sequences that appear to be broken. And it's like, so did we at one point have the different functions that basically negated the whole what we now view as aging? And like we're starting to uncover some of the aspects of aging, but we still don't know like really why we can't fix it, right? Like why doesn't our system solve these problems? Because it does for like this this period of time, everything seems to stay pretty stable, and then all of a sudden just we just start plummeting. Why? Why does this happen? And people don't want to address that question. But Sal, before I forget, in line with what you were talking about on the power demand, what most people don't know is that this is the current, and it's gone up dramatically over the last decade as we've learned more about the brain. The current estimate for data storage in a single human brain is 2.5 petabytes of data. 2.5 petabytes of data that's somehow being able to be stored in your brain. So if you think about this, it would only take about 150 humans' brains to store every byte of data on the entire planet.
Yeah, amazing.
And that's just, to me, a mind bender when you think about it.
Right, and there are more connections in the human central nervous system than all the switchers and routers on the World Wide Web. Nephilim Free, welcome. I just wanted to read this article, if it's okay, and then go have at it. I found this article by Natalie Tangier, and as I was saying, I tried to insert it in a peer-reviewed paper. The editor said, no, we want only scholarly things. And I'm like, okay, bummer, because this states it so well. This is ironically a New York Times article, but hey, every now and then a broken clock gets the right time, right? She's saying photoreceptors, this is why I love biophysics, by the way. Photoreceptors exemplify the principle of optimization, idea gaining even wider traction among researchers, that certain key features of the natural world have been honed by evolution. Excuse, that's a typo there. It's honed by intelligent design to the highest possible peaks of performance, the legal limits of what Newton, Maxwell, Pauli, Planck, et Albert will allow. Scientists have identified and mathematically anatomized an array of cases where optimization has left its fastidious mark, among them the superb efficiency with which bacterial cells will close in on a food source, the precision response in a fruit fly embryo to contouring molecules that help distinguish tail from head, and the way a shark can find its prey by measuring microfluxes of electricity in the water of a tremulous millionth of a volt strong, which, as Douglas Fields observed in Scientific American, is like detecting an electric field generated by a standard AA battery with one pole dipped in the Long Island Sound and the other pole in the waters of Jacksonville, Florida. In each instance, biophysicists have calculated the system couldn't get faster, more sensitive, or more efficient without first relocating to an alternate universe with alternate physical constants.
Wow.
And what I wanted to say is, these evolutionary biologists that keep saying we're junk, Jerry Coyne made a big deal about bad design and competence. I'm just like, guys, you're going to lose that battle. You're going to be humiliated. One of his big things was arguing about the backward retina wiring of the eye. That's been blown away by biophysicists. They said that's actually a great feature. And it, by the way, it has waveguides. I talked to an electromagnetic engineer. He said, that's just amazing. This is really difficult to engineer. So even though I've been a little bit cautious about this thing with junk DNA, I mean, I've studied it and I said, I'm pretty sure the guys are right. But, I'm just waiting for just a little more data to come in and just make me feel a little bit more comfortable to pass this on to students and say, this is really good stuff. So I mean, you saw what good stuff was today in James Tur's talk. When you can say with confidence, we have this data, we are right, you guys are wrong. That's what I want for some of the other biology stuff.
Yeah, but Sal, this is why you're a blackjack player and I'm a poker player. Unless you want to come to the conclusion that the human body or the human existence can occur on 1.5% of the genome, which would make it like 20 megabytes, something like that of data, something in that vicinity.
Yeah, 50 megabytes.
Unless you want to come to the conclusion that somehow your body is able to be formed and executed on something that's smaller than a high-resolution freaking JPEG that you took on your phone.
Yeah.
Unless you want to make that conclusion, obviously there is more to it. And then me, when you really start to extrapolate, and that's just before you consider, think about this. The engineering schematics and diagrams for something like the human eye, if you were designing it back in your days of engineering with NASA and the military and everything, I would be stunned if any of the schematics of the different things you guys were working on, the file just of the designs was less than 20 megabytes.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm assuming that you would also never argue that what you guys were designing is anywhere on the same stratosphere as some of the most simple components of the human of a life form, of a normal cell, right? So obviously there has to be additional layers of data, number one. Number two, there's got to be a much larger operating system and methods for the execution of these systems. Has to be. We know the systems are there. So unless you want to argue that somehow they just magically poof into existence, which I'm pretty sure the atheists don't want to, they accuse us of making that claim. So, you have God poofed into existence. No, that's not what I'm saying. But that's what you are, because you're claiming that this poofed into existence on less than 20 megabytes of data. Seriously? That's what you're arguing? Right. I can't take you seriously anymore. But ultimately, I'm saying this in the context of the poker blackjack. At this point now, it's dude, I know you're bluffing. I know the rest of y'all are full-scale bluffing. And, as I've used the analogy before, the flop has come. I have ace-king of hearts. The flop is queen, jack 10, 2 hearts. I have flopped the nut straight, and I have a nut flush redraw. If you bet into me, I'm going to call. I'll probably shove all my chips in. If I call and you re-raise on the turn, I'm still going to put all my chips in. On the river, I will put if another heart comes, I have the absolute nuts. I call whatever you bet. That is where we are, Sal, in the context of will there be more functional realizations inside the genome? Yes, we know there will be, because there's new ones every day, right? There's new papers every day. And this applies to whether it be on the quote-unquote genetic level, the systems level, the chemical level, what all the things Dr. Tor was talking about today. Yeah. Every single layer in every discipline that's studying life forms, every single one of them is being blown away with new discoveries. If this is the case, then we have nothing to be hesitant about, because the probability of us being correct, it's going back to the poker analogy. I snap call. Let's go. And because ultimately it's going to be, show me your cards. You got nothing. Ship it and slide me that stack. I appreciate it. But anyway, on that note, I gotta get back to work and get stuff going because I gotta get up at crack of dawn. You guys have fun. Continue on. Also, have a great show, everybody. Neff, great to see you. Sorry I didn't get to say
Okay,
much to
John.
you.
Take care.
And everybody have a good time.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, LPP, you rescheduled your show just in case some people might head over there by accident. Just
Oh yeah, I'm pushing. I'm probably gonna do it Sunday night. My 1 year anniversary is that will not be happening tonight. I got way too much stuff I gotta get done before tomorrow morning. So have a good night, everybody.
Okay,
have a
take
good
care,
night.
John.
Neff, sir, thank you for your patience. You had the floor. I'm
Yeah.
kind of all talked out.
Hey, well, it's good to see you, Sal. I love what you do. I was just thinking about some of the things you were saying, and the irony, the absurdity of the things that evolutionists say. They do talk about the human body as failed examples of design, bad design. We hear that mantra all the time. But when we see the news articles in the general media talking about new biological discoveries, they always act like they're so astonished how amazing this is. You know, they discover some biological thing and it's just like, wow, this is absolutely incredible. But then if somebody points out in a discussion about creation, oh, that very thing, we would say, oh yeah, bad design. That's so bad. But then when they're talking to their pals, it's like, wow, that's incredible. What amazing, thing, you know. So that irony is pathetic. And I was thinking about also the idea that, well, a broken down car, isn't it still have the complete earmarks of design? Doesn't it demonstrate that it's absolutely designed, even if it's broken down? So a human biological component, like an eye or something, if it's degenerating, if it's less functional now than it was before, doesn't imply anyway that it's not designed. Um, uh, so the evolutionist is really, they're using a double standard here when they complain about bad design, but then they're so astonished about the little discoveries made in biology, as how in the world, look what evolution could do. Really, they're just proving the scriptures, which tell us they give the glory to the animal and not to God. Romans 1, they give the glory to the creature and not to the creator, who is blessed forever in it. It's just so obvious that that's what they're doing. And I just find it so sickeningly ironic that they do that. And also, uh, the evolutionist will never be happy unless a human being had the eyesight that was 20 times better than an eagle, a heart that would never fail, you know, uh, arteries that never clogged, where they had they could run as fast as a cheetah, because if you say, well, how come God made man? But look, an owl can see far better than a human being. Gee, so we're some special creation, huh? As though a human being would have to have telescopic zoom eyes. We should be able to zoom in on the moon and see the details in the individual craters on the moon. This is the standard that they try to present that would satisfy them, right? As it to believe in intelligent design. It's just absurdity.
Well, I wanted to say, I I said, why don't you take it to your logical conclusion? What would you finally settle for? And I realized they'd only settle for being equal to God. They
Exactly,
don't
you're
want to
right.
say it,
That's right.
but that's
Yeah,
exactly the
we would have
temperament.
to be superhuman, unbelievable. Could run like yeah. We would have to be superheroes. We'd have to be Flash Gordon and Superman, mixed into one. And Stretch O2, might as well throw him in there. The Rock, you know. We'd have to have those abilities. That nothing less will satisfy the God
And that
deniers.
goes all the way back to Eden,
Yeah.
that's where there's that root there. And I wanted, uh, someone named not our Erica, another Erica at MIT. She's saying how incompetent the designer was, and I said, well, so what do you think? Do you think it would be a good thing that the designer would kind of let you know you're not perfect and that you're not God? I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you need a reminder, because I wanted to say the way you're acting, it's telling me you really need a reminder you're not God, because you're acting like you're better than him. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just
I mean,
disgusting.
that's a good point. Yeah, they're the ultimate judge of what God has created, huh? Yeah.
I wasn't going to show this video. It's just a title, and it's just to highlight what we're. I'm saying the biophysicists are the ones that are making us realize we're more perfect than we imagined.
Mm.
We're more perfect in the sense of optimality for physics.
Yes.
We may not be perfect in terms of what we would want and desire for our life. That's not the point. But he's pointing out that the machines are optimized. The machines in life are better than anything we could make or ever make, because
Right.
they're operating at the limit of physics. And that should tell us something. And we can't build these machines. He was describing some of these things and just like, oh my goodness, we can't build it. And James Tour kind of pointed that out from a totally different angle. I didn't know. I mean, I was humbled tonight, because I have this is Dr. William Bialek pictured here. I have his textbook on biophysics, and I did not know about CISS. And I would be surprised if there's very little mention of it in his book, because biology has so much optimization in it. You can't cover all the physics in it. But the physics in biology is fascinating, because they're able to make machines operate and do things that
Yeah.
are just at the limit of is possible.
Oh,
It
at the
exceeds our
absolute
imagination.
minimal scale. Minimal scale. The least amount of matter sometimes necessary to cause a thing is what makes a biological function. That's exactly right. It's the positive and negatives of atoms that often are the basis for why. Well, they are actually at the basis for all biological activity. It comes down to atoms.
Yeah.
It's beyond nanoscale. It's micro nanoscale technology, and it's just mind-boggling. I remember learning about sharks, which they've discovered have little electrosensors around their mouth. Going all the way around their mouth, they have these little sensors, and the shark can actually get a picture of a fish in the water that is many meters away from itself that it can't see because the water's too murky. It can get a visual of the animal's body, the size of it, from a considerable distance by sensing the electrical feedback from the animal's body. So a shark can be swimming around and see a 20-pound fish swimming, or a 10-pound fish swimming, 40, 50 meters away, and know how big it is. Know
And-
whether or not it's worth
Yeah.
chasing after.
And-
Because even though it can't see it with its eyes. And so everything we learn about biology, it's just amazing. And one more thing, I remember watching video that was made with cameras back in the 1950s. There's videos you can see of it on YouTube, of a white blood cell chasing down a bacteria. Have you ever seen video of that? You probably have.
No.
A white blood cell literally chasing down a bacteria through the tissues of a human body, through a medium that they put it in, and the white blood cell is chasing after it like cops and robbers in cars on the street. They're making left turns, they're making right turns, and the white blood cell is trailing right after him, and he's slowly catching up to this bacteria, and he literally follows a path right behind this bacteria, chases him down, and catches him by stringing out this little putting out I don't know, an appendage of itself, right? A little string of its cell membrane goes shooting out and snatches the bacteria like stretcho or something, and grabs hold of it and catches him, hooks him, and then he pulls them in and consumes it. And I just thought that was absolutely amazing that a cell, which has no intellect whatsoever, right, to speak of, and yet it's able to chase down a bacteria that way and capture it to eat it on a long journey too. I mean, making left turn, right turn, make 2 left turns and then 2 right turns until it catches the thing. And this is a cell. I mean, and the evolutionist is going to say there's no evidence of design. But it's just amazing. You should see that video. Anybody who's an evolutionist ought to watch that video and then tell themselves there's no evidence of intelligent design. They're watching something so small it can't be seen with the naked eye chase down another thing so small it can't be seen with the naked eye to eat it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing. And this is for the protection of the organism that it dwells in, right? To keep the organism fit. I mean, unbelievable.
And I did want, if people were curious why I was showing this screen, on the one hand, we have the physicist view of life. The physicist view, and also a lot of engineers, I'd say, more perfect than we imagined. More perfect than we imagined. Darwin's view, which again, I totally sympathize. If his daughter died, that colored the way he perceived the world. For a parent to lose a child, you go through all sorts of things, and what I found is when people undergo trouble, they're going to either get closer to God or farther away from him. And we know what direction Darwin went. And what he said, what a book, A Devil's Chaplain. The Devil's Chaplain was this guy named Robert Taylor, or someone named Taylor. He was an apostate preacher who became a total anti-Christian, quote unquote evangelizer. He was he was an apostate, and so just so people know who the Devil's Chaplain is. And Darwin said, "What a book a Devil's Chaplain might write on the clumsy, wasteful, blundering, low, and cruel works of nature." And you see that does echo the sentiments of evolutionary biologists. It's clumsy, wasteful, and blundering. But what we saw today with James Tour and this chiral induced spin selectivity, I can't pronounce it. It's more perfect than we imagined. More perfect than we imagined. So we're contrasting, what some people perceive on some level. And I totally get it. Darwin's daughter died and he had a very low view of nature from that point on. And then on the other hand, we see at the atomic level, at the electron level, even, that there's this incredible design. And the scripture that came to mind was when Jesus was recognizing that people are anxious. They're anxious about food and clothing and a lot of bad things happening in the world. What did he say? Consider the lilies of the valley, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. But I tell you, Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these. Our study, what is my mission for this channel, is when we study the science, we are doing that. We are considering the lily, how it grows, because Jesus knew that as we study his creation, despite all the problems we have, we will be comforted because we will witness his power, glory, majesty, and wisdom.
I agree.
It inspires us to trust him. So we had something to share here.
I believe that statement of Jesus was spoken in part by him for future generations.
Isn't that amazing? That's exactly my feeling.
I do. I actually believe that. I believe that, Sal.
Yeah,
I believe that he did that in part so that because he knew in 1,000 years man's technology would grow to the point that people would say, "What did Jesus say?" Because now we can dissect. We can look at the microscopic technology, nanotechnology in the arrangement of cells in a flower, and see the incredible design that illustrates what Jesus said when he said what he meant when he said even Solomon is not arrayed like one of these. So, but yes, this is. I would love to play just a little bit of this. This is amazing. You want to see an example of intelligent design? Here it is, right before your eyes. This is a human white blood cell chasing down a bacteria because the bacteria is a bad boy and he doesn't need to be there, and he's going to eat him. This footage was shot in the 1950s.
Wow.
He's literally turning every time the bacteria takes a turn. He turns with it. He is coming after the thing. And there, it's too late for the bacteria. It's got him now. Now, isn't that amazing? The thing is chasing the bacteria. He turns when it turns. He's on it. He's after it. He's right behind it. He's going to get you. Here he comes. And then he's going to stick to it. And once he gets his little grubby hands on it, it's all over for the bacteria. The bacteria is now food.
And
that's incredible.
And it's easy to think, oh, he can just see it. It's like, no, wait till you study the molecular details of sensing. You'll realize how incredible that is.
It's a chemical signature. He's chasing down the chemical, or either the chemical or electrical. I don't know. He's probably sensing the waste being ejected by the bacteria's cell, and hunting down the scent of the bacteria.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And now you're giving me something to look up. Now, what William Biolek, that physicist I showed, by the way, that would be a great lecture that I might play on my channel and we could just have a good time watching it. I believe it's public domain. If it's not, then we won't do it. But that was very uplifting. The sad thing is a lot of these biophysicists said this is the result of natural selection.
Yeah.
Natural selection optimized it, just like, guys, you are so close, but then you just miss the market right at the end. You blow it.
Really?
But what he said is bacteria. So this is not the white cell that you were pointing out, but bacteria can actually count molecules. They can count molecules in time. That's how they actually track down food. It would not surprise me if that white cell is counting molecules to be able to find its prey.
Okay.
It can see that there's a couple more molecules in front of it than in its rear. And that's how it's directing.
Oh, really?
The biophysicists that figured this out, they said, okay, what's the concentration that's being released here?
Oh, because the bacteria is adding its own waste to the environment?
Wouldn't surprise me. So we don't know. And when you mentioned the shark, just for the viewer's benefit, the way that it knows it has an electric field, the prey is moving its muscles. It's sensing the electric signals in the nerves of its prey. And I was just like, oh my goodness, when we hook up an EKG, you have to put the sensors right on the person's body.
Right.
To do this in, say, a water environment, this is like hooking up an EKG in the water and you're going to sense your prey's, the prey's electric signal, which means you have to filter out your own. How do you do that?
Right.
How do you do that?
Imagine. I mean, look at the sonogram technology. We make blurry images, and that's just using sound waves right against a person's body. Yet the shark can see the outline of this fish moving many meters away from it based on its ability to sense that electrical output from the fish's body. That's amazing. Just incredible.
It is. So, I may be actually running out of gas unless someone joins the stream.
Okay, no problem.
I'm
glad I got to hook up with you even for a minute.
Yeah, well, I was not addressing this to you. I was actually asking the audience if someone wanted to join and kind of bail me out. Otherwise, maybe we'll talk for a little bit more.
No, I have to get going myself anyway. It's time for me to hit the sack. I've got crash. I get up at 4:00 in the morning most of the time. So, yeah, it's time for me to hit the hay. But it was good talking to you, Sal. And
likewise.
And you keep doing what you're doing. God bless you. And
God bless you.
Stay strong. And just everybody should be aware. When someone says that they see insufficient evidence of design, they're blowing hot air. They see it. They refuse to accept it. Don't let atheists fool you. When they say that there's no evidence for intelligent design, they know there is. That's a lie. They know there is. what they're trying to do is convince themselves that everything is okay anyway. That's what they're trying to do. Yeah, yeah. Dr. Carter uh, says, look up chemotaxis. Even in bacteria is highly complex. I don't know what chemotaxis is.
Well,
But
that's one where they
I
can sense
think
the
I could figure
chemicals.
that word out. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was talking about, where the bacteria can sense individual molecules and kind of their
Okay.
gradients, and that's how it's
Okay.
able to find food. But it's not just like concentrations; it's individual molecules. They can count.
Well,
They can
by
count it. They have a little
ta-
counter there.
taxis implies that it can sense the type of molecule. Is that correct, Dr. Carter? That not just that there's more molecules, but the type, or am
Type,
I wrong?
yes, the type. That's how it finds its food.
Yeah, taxis. Like taxonomy, I see the
I think
similarity in the
taxi,
word.
as in
Taxi.
transport.
Taxi. Okay.
Well, he would know, and
Yeah, I'm
maybe
sure Dr.
sometime when
Carter is.
he's free and if we remember the topic, we'll bring it up. But that was also the subject of what biophysicists are. I mean, you could see why they're very fascinated. There's just all these
Sure.
marvels of nanotechnology.
Oh, yeah. And look how man is constantly trying to mimic
Yeah,
God's creations. I mean, the examples of man designing things based on what they've discovered in nature, in living systems, is huge. It's extensive. All kinds of things um, based on the design that God has made. Yeah, it's amazing. Well, Sal, I guess I'm going to take off. It's good to see you, brother. You take care of yourself and keep on doing what you're doing. God bless
thank
you.
you, thank you very much for dropping in, and take
Okay.
care. God bless.
God bless. Have a good one.
So I probably will be shutting down in a little bit unless someone joins, because it's really hard to do a monologue. But um, oh, or a way toward food sources. It says here, chemotaxis moves toward a concentration gradient or away from toxins. And as I was trying to mention, these gradients can be sensed by counting individual molecules. That's what the biophysicists have calculated, because the bacteria are small enough that sometimes the concentration weak enough that the only way it would be detecting this is counting molecules over time and doing some what we call a time derivative to sense the gradient. It's just incredible. Tonight's topic by Dr. Tour, I have to remember this acronym: chiral induced spin selectivity. Chiral induced spin selectivity. And I thought one of the highlights of the hour was he was saying that if he was just kind of crushing Dave's claim that maybe life could have arisen without being chiral, and Dr. Tour was shutting that down basically by saying that a lot of the chemistry would not work at all. Oh, by the way, John Maddox announced that he's postponing his celebration. It's not going to be tonight. Turns out I was about to shut down my stream anyway, and so it's going to be postponed to another day. So just look there. So I guess if anyone wants to visit that, be a part of that celebration, it's going to be on another day. So the moment that really struck me was there are two parts when he was saying that it's just kind of, Dave, it's just things that he doesn't understand. He'll just say it's easy. It's easy. And Dr. Tour is trying to point out when you actually study the matter in detail, it's not so easy. It's easy in the minds of people who don't, for people who don't know. And let's see if I have a picture of this. I know this wasn't very, I'm going to show just a picture of, greetings, sir, Yeti. Your microphone, sir. Welcome. I can hear you tapping on the microphone. Oh, I don't think I can hear you. I'm not sure if it's on my end or yours. I'm really sorry about that. Anyway, I mean, thank you for visiting. I appreciate your visit. So, what was the thing I wanted to show? Oh, yeah. Dave was saying it's really easy to do this, and he has a really strong tendency to say that. And I'm going to show Dr. Tour specifically mentioned the Dunning-Kruger graph. Now, I inserted the picture of Professor Dave here, but he said, Dave is right here. And I don't think he used the word Mount Stupid, but that was the implication. Dave is right there at the top of Mount Stupid, and I could tell you, I think everyone knows who the expert is here. It's pretty obvious that someone's an expert, and then there's someone here at Mount Stupid, and I just and Dr. Tour pointed out that the reasons, just based on chiral induced spin selectivity, why the chemistry is very unlikely to work, if not impossible to work. But there are other considerations from homochirality for like amino acids making proteins. You wouldn't be able to create alpha helices and beta sheets, things very important for protein structure. So just forget it if you have a racemic mix and you're trying to somehow assemble proteins from a genomic map. It's going to blow apart. And then there'll be problems in being able to make a readable DNA. There's no way that we could traverse the DNA strand, or even make one that's traversable. You can't make a traversable DNA strand if you're just messing this up. That's something Change Laura Tan pointed out. And Dr. Carter said, we should do an episode on electron flow and physiology, membrane depolarization, heart rhythm, electron transport chain, piezoelectric effect on bones and osteoblast response, etc. That could probably be top. Yes, definitely. Yes to all of the above, and if that's multiple shows. So yes, by all means. And then finally, I think the highlight of the show, and as I said, I was totally humbled, and I'm supposedly a student of physics and biology, and he used terms today I didn't know, one of them being CISS, chiral induced spin selectivity. That went over my head, and it just blew me away, the effect on chemistry. And the moment was when he said that if the cell didn't have this CISS, that we would need a power plant on the order of megawatts, say for the sake of argument, 10 megawatts. All right, just think of a microwave oven that's 1500 watts, and you multiply that by 1,000, and you focus all those microwaves on the brain for for a protracted length of time. You're not, you probably get an explosion. Sorry, that just brought to mind. My sister reported an incident at either her hospital or another where the babysitter was hospitalized because the kids she was babysitting tried to dry their cat by putting them in the microwave, and the cats exploded, and the babysitter got panicked and got sick and had to be taken by ambulance to the hospital. I know that had nothing to do with anything, but I mean, just the picture of 10 megawatts going through someone's brain, we just couldn't handle it. But because we have chiral induced spin selectivity, the brain is able to operate with 10 watts, and that's a manageable temperature, manageable. So we have like on the order of 1 million times improvement because of the way God made our bodies. And that's something that, again, Professor Dave seems lost upon him. And I was joking. Yes, someone did have to say this. Mr. Jetty, if you're the one that was trying to get on the show, apologies again. I don't know what happened for the audio connection, but if you come back, I hope we're able to fix it. And thanks for supporting our channel. But and yes, sorry, I lost my train of thought because that was so funny. But it was lost on Professor Dave. Oh, I now remember what I'm going to say, and this is just to close out for this evening. That that if this, in a boxing match, they usually go 12 to 15 rounds, and usually the fight ends when one of the boxers is knocked out. In the case of this 14-part series, it's really 14 parts because it starts at episode 0. In the case of this 14-part series, it's like Professor Dave is getting knocked out almost every minute of every round. This is just brutal. This is just brutal. And yeah, Professor Dave picked the wrong person to pick a fight with. On the other hand, I have a feeling that this was on Dr. Tour's mind because he's taking this to a larger level. He is trying to tell the scientific community to stop what they're doing, to stop misleading people. They can continue their experiments of intelligently designed experiments to build things and make these incredible chemicals, but they can't represent this as mindless processes or proof that mindless processes can make these chemicals. That's what's not honest. And he's telling them to stop doing it. And he's asking for other scientists to rise up to the challenge and help stop this this misreporting. And I'd go far enough to say it's borderline fraud at this point because it's just getting really bad. So I wanted to say, just to close out with a gospel verse. And it's one I shared earlier in the show. It's when Jesus was talking to people and saying, hey, you're worried about your food and clothing, just all the problems in the world. He said, don't be anxious. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. But I tell you, Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these. And I think the sentiment I've got in the chat, and also a sentiment that I share, is Jesus said this verse, and he had us in mind, especially in the 21st century, because it would have more meaning to us than any generation since the age of the apostles, that we can appreciate that verse on levels that other Christians throughout history could not appreciate, that we can see the majesty and glory of God. It says in Romans that we understand God's nature by the things that have been made, and that is so true now in the 21st century. So I'd like to thank all of the viewers who joined us this evening for this show and for coming out to Dr. Tour's lecture. And it's just been great hanging out with you guys. So until we meet again, God willing, let's please take care and God bless you. Have a good evening.